These days we have been deeply studying the ABCs of 2022 and speak to the church about the call for family altar. 2 Samuel we know is about King David and the sons. Despite being a man after God's own heart and loving his own children so much, they were so godless people. David failed as a parent. First Kings chapter 1 verse 6, it gives an idea about the parenting style. He never disciplined his children and finally ended up having a godless generation. This is a reality. We are good in the public worship places, but our homes, we may not be the role models. What is family altar all about? It's a time in which as a family we come together to seek the face of God, because as a family we are dependent on His leading. We have been studying from the book of Malachi at the beginning of this year, and Malachi represents the picture of what happens if a godly generation does not pass on to the next generation the ways of God, their encounters with God. All of us have a responsibility for the next generation. In the book of Malachi, God is saying to the people of Israel, my people, I have loved you deeply. How did the people respond to God? They are arrogant. They retorted saying, really? When was this? Here is a generation to whom probably the previous generation has not passed on the greatness of God. They failed to remember once their fathers were slaves. They were rescued miraculously. Now these people have the guts to ask him, really? When was it? That's how human nature works. So it is important to have our heart rooted in the love of God, irrespective of our circumstances. We need one generation of people telling the other generation the faithfulness and goodness of God. So that is why it is so important to have that daily coming together where we read the word of God together, understand His perspectives from His word, praying about every challenges and situations of our life, coming together even when we don't feel like it, because we need to remember things that God has done for us, lest our children think life is all comfort. The first reason for having a regular family altar is that we be rooted in the love of God. The second part of the black picture that we see in the book of Malachi in verse 6, a generation has failed to honor God because they have lost sight of the greatness of God. Ephesians chapter 6 verse 1, honor and obedience to God and godly authorities is connected to blessing of your life, of your well-being. Is not only a Old Testament concept, it is a concept of New Testament also. When God says, you are despising me, they respond like this. Who? Us? When did we ever despise your name? They did not even know their attitude towards God was wrong. They thought this is how it should be. This is okay. Nobody had corrected them. Correction is painful because we are never willing to pay the cost of correcting so that there will be long-term benefits. It is important to teach our younger generation to honor God. In verse 7, God tells, you offer polluted sacrifices on my altar. They get again surprised. Polluted sacrifices? When have we ever done a thing like that? When we say, I will do my time with God at the end of the day when everything else finish, in some way it is equivalent to offering sick and blind animals, because we are tired like sick people. We are blind and sleepy like, the blind animals that we offer. We may not give lame animals, but we have always lame excuses to give. Honor God and you will find God honoring you. Family altar is a place where you teach the family to prioritize on God. When you think about altar, what is the picture that comes to our mind? Today, we don't have to offer animals. Bible calls them praises and thanksgiving as offerings to God. Prayers as incenses to God. One thing that we see here is about the way they offered sacrifice. Why do you think these people brought sick and blind sacrifices? There could be many reasons. One thing is they may be in a hurry, cannot check for any blemishes. There's no time to choose. The other reason is offered careless and cheap sacrifices. That was their attitude. What is the first example of altar mentioned in Bible? It is in Genesis. Cain and Abel. Cain, he wanted to give something to God. But what was the difference in attitude of Abel? Chapter 4, verse 4. Why was God partial to Abel? When he came to God, it was a costly affair for him. He took some effort of choosing. The best part, cost that you pay to prepare yourself to come to God's presence. Maybe at your quiet time, maybe coming coming to church, if you prepare yourself and come, the worship will start becoming more meaningful. The message will start becoming more full because you are prepared to receive what God is going to speak. How do I prepare for the family altar? Show the family how to let the Bible speak to you. Read a portion from the Word of God. Prepare and respond to God. There are three things the Bible will always speak clearly to you. First, speak to you about the character of God. The second thing is the fallen nature of man. Third thing, how the man should relate with God. Bible dedicates a whole book of Leviticus just to tell how important it is for you to prepare yourself before you come to God's presence as frequently as you can. The main danger of anything that we do is things can over a time can become a ritual. Verse 9 and verse 10 is God's attitudes towards ritualism. God in Psalm 50 says, the cattle on the 1,000 hill belongs to me. I don't need any of those offerings. You honor me. Verse 11. This is the vision of God. God is looking for that day in which there is an altar raised throughout the nations. When every knee will bow down and every tongue will confess that God is the Lord. How we can contribute to His vision? Reviving of your broken family altars. Jeremiah 29:13. Experience God. Don't say it is difficult. And it goes on to say in chapter 2, if we don't respond to God and give Him the honor and glory due to His name, if you don't keep me as the center, the end result will be humiliation in your life. The consequences, it affected every area of their lives. They become faithless. Chapter 1 and 2, mainly God speaking to the priests. So how is it applicable to us? 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 9. If you are a child of God, you are the priest in your family, responsible for raising that family altar. See that your family keeps God at the center. Genesis chapter 18 verse 19. The fulfillment of God's blessings and promise on the generations of Abraham depended on how he raised his children in God's ways. What is God's desire from a family? In Malachi chapter 2 verse 15, God says, godly offspring. Can a family altar and the dedicated time regularly before God bring forth a godly generation? I believe that regular encounter with the greatness of God and the great love He has shown to the gospel that we preach, it has the power to save our children. It is not only about families. Paul, who was never married, he had a Timothy or a Titus or a people whom he left behind as his godly generation. Elijah had an Elisha. Moses, we may not know about his children, but in Joshua, they triggered passion in next generation. So, whom are you triggering that passion? Let us be the families after God's own heart, centering it around God. And all this we do because, as God said, I have loved you deeply.